Hi everyone. Today, what we're going to be doing is starting off learning a little bit about how to create an app. So the end game is that you guys will be able to create an app, hopefully in Glide. Now, Glide is an app, and you can see I've got it up on the screen at the moment. Is basically a program that is designed to allow you to create apps fairly easily without the requirements of code by just putting together different screens. So this is an example of something I'm playing around with at the moment. Um, and it has data in the background and all sorts of things with different data tables. So you can see I'm clicking on all that sort of stuff. So basically, the first step in getting an app together is to work out exactly what your brief is, because you really need to know exactly what you're doing before you start trying to build. Now, just to be aware, this particular app, this particular program has a lot of capability. You can do all sorts of things with data. You can upload existing tables. You can email out of it. You can do a number of different things. And so the functionality was too numerous to show in videos, so we wanted to show you enough to get you going. Now, when you're creating your app, the thing that you're going to actually be assessed on is not your ability to build the app, but rather the brief that you come up with and how well it's designed. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go through a very simple example. I would expect your examples to be a little bit more complex than the one I've got here, but hopefully this will give you a bit of an idea of how to go through it to create the brief, and then in the next lessons we'll go through how to actually turn that brief into an actual app, and then ultimately deploy the app. So the first thing you should be starting off with, whenever you have a brief for a product, is you need almost a one-sentence brief of what you're trying to create, what the problem is. So apps should always solve some sort of problem. So the problem for me is that I coach a hockey club, a women's hockey side, and I like to have stats on how often certain events happen in the game. And there's no easy way to get that other than me writing on a piece of paper. So the problem that this app will solve is allowing me to collect that data during the game. So basically, so that's the problem it's solving. Now, the key stats that I'm interested in, just so you can talk hockey, you can easily change this app to be for footy or soccer or whatever it is. The first thing we look at is how many short corners we get. So short corners is in hockey, it's kind of like a corner kick in soccer. So it's basically a set play. And then the number of times we do circle entries, that would be equivalent to the number of times you enter the front 50 of footy or something like that. And how many times we get a shot on goal as a result of that entry, and then how many times we have a repeat attack. So i.e. we go in attack, the ball turns over, and then we immediately get a second attack. So there's the stats that I want to be able to do. Now, once you've got that, the next step is once you've got your basic problem, what you want to do, then the next step is to really start to define what are the key things that you need to actually put this in place. So for me, user requirements are quite an important factor. So basically, the most important for me is to be able to enter the stats in real time. So I'm on the side of the ground, I'm clicking the buttons, and the amount of clicks required to actually enter the data needs to be minimal. So i.e. one click, if that. We need to be able to see the outputs of these stats in real time during the game. So I need to be able to see as the stats are being collected, are we in front for a particular stat or behind? And also want to make it easy to have drop-down lists with the names of the teams and the names of the opposition, so that we can maintain data quality. Now, at this point, it's a couple of things I want to highlight. So number one is that the Glide app does not have, it only has the capability to do a list button. So what we mean by a list button is it's basically one where you click an arrow and it drops down with a series of selections. You cannot do a combo box. So a combo box is the same thing, except that if one of the selections is not what you want, you can then type in what you want. So it does not have that capability because I've checked with the developers. And the second thing to make sure you're clear about is what we mean by data quality. So I'm just going to do a quick example so that everyone understands. So I'm going to quickly grab a new sheet here. So if we have data quality, let's say, for example, I'm going to enter the value test into the cell. Now, if the next user comes along and instead of saying test, they say testing, okay, and then the next user comes along and they also say testing, but they put a full stop on the end, and someone else comes in and says test and misspells test, for example. All of those things are all separate entries. And if you think about it, all of the data that's here is actually really meaning the same thing. It's a test of some sort. But as far as if we put in a filter onto this thing, and we see how, which is kind of obvious in this case. Oh, come on, get a filter to go on. Okay, don't worry about the filter. But basically, you can see that you've got 4 entries here that all mean basically the same thing, but you can't put them down to one selection item. So what you don't want when you have data quality, where you're entering data, is you don't want the user to be allowed to enter data willy-nilly. You need to control the way that they enter it. So often the ideal way is to have that drop-down list. So this is an example of what's referred to as poor data quality. Okay, so back to our application. Sorry, you can see I'm doing this at school because the bell's just gone. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to define what it is in the data that we actually need to collect. So for me, I'd like to collect the date at which the match occurred, our team, because there's more than one team in the club, the name of the opposition, and then we need the data for all the stats, so us versus them for the 4 different stats. Now, to be able to create a drop-down list for both of these, so that when we come along and we're just selecting the name, we need an area, we need another table to be able to produce that drop-down list. So I'm going to have a second table of data that's going to have a name, and then a third one that's going to have the opposition name. Okay, so we've got a pretty good idea of the data structure that we have, and that's a really very important thing to know. So basically, I'm expecting to see detailed in your document, detailed information on exactly how your data will be structured. Okay. Now, the last thing we want to do is we want to kind of work out what screens do we actually need for the user to be able to do it. Now, this is a really simple app. So we're going to need a main menu, okay, and we're going to need a main menu basically to navigate to other screens. So we need something with buttons on the front to say go to this screen or go to that screen. We need to be able to enter team names and opposition names into these individual tables up here, and then we need something that's going to produce allow us to enter in the match data. So with that, we've now got a basic brief of all the things that we need. Now, when you're doing your brief, which I'm not going to bother to do, but there is an example where I have done it, we would expect to see that for each one of these screens that you are showing us exactly what you're planning to build. And so it's very, very clear exactly how you want the app to work. Now, remember, the key thing here is that you will get your marks based on your planning, not on the building of the app. So that means you can be quite expansive in what you do and to produce an app, but you really need to be thinking about the usability of the app for the user and considering how to make this app easy. Because as you all know, if something is not easy for someone to use, they won't use it. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next video where we'll start to construct this app. Cheers, guys.